I always wondered why being called a good guy felt more like a polite rejection than a compliment. People would say it with a smile, as though they were giving me something meaningful, but underneath the words was a finality that left me standing alone. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't the type to play games, and maybe that was the problem. In a world where confidence and charm seemed to get rewarded, I carried my heart too openly, and more often than not, it left me overlooked. Yet even with the disappointments that came one after another, I held on to the belief that somewhere, someone would see me for who I truly was. It was during an ordinary stretch of days when I met her. Nothing about the moment was extraordinary, but the impact stayed with me. She wasn't the kind of person who tried to draw attention to herself, yet there was a calmness in her that made people notice her anyway. Our first exchange was simple, a few words shared in passing, but it felt genuine in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. I didn't think much of it at the time, but soon our paths kept crossing, as though life had quietly decided to bring us together. The more we spoke, the more I found myself drawn to her. She had a warmth about her, the kind that made conversations feel effortless. There was no need for pretense or forced charm. She listened with sincerity, and when she spoke, it was with thoughtfulness that made me want to know more. I remember thinking how rare it was to find someone who carried such gentleness in their words. For the first time in a long while, I felt a spark of hope. I had grown used to being dismissed or told I was too nice, as if kindness were a flaw. But with her, it didn't feel that way. Instead, it felt like she valued the way I was. We would talk about simple things: work, family, dreams we had quietly tucked away. Each conversation revealed a little more of her, and in turn, I found myself opening up in ways I usually didn't. She had an ease about her presence, the kind that reminded me of what companionship should feel like, not rushed, not forced, just natural. I started to look forward to the moments when I would see her again. Even if it was just for a few minutes, those exchanges carried a weight that stayed with me long after. I found myself thinking about her at the end of the day, replaying her words, wondering if she thought of me too. What surprised me most was how quickly I began to feel understood. She didn't need me to prove myself or pretend to be anything more than I was. That alone made her different from anyone else I had known. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic confessions. It was about the quiet certainty that something meaningful was forming between us. In those early days, I let myself believe that maybe this time was different. Maybe I wasn't just the good guy who would be set aside while someone else captured her heart. Maybe she saw something in me worth holding on to. It was a fragile hope, but it was enough to keep me moving forward, waiting to see where this unexpected connection might lead. The more time we spent together, the easier it became to forget how uncertain I usually felt around people. What began as small exchanges soon grew into conversations that stretched longer than either of us intended. We found excuses to talk, lingering in places we would normally just pass through, and each time I walked away with a quiet sense of comfort I hadn't known in years. She had a way of making the ordinary feel significant. A simple question about my day turned into stories I didn't even realize I wanted to share, and her laughter at the smallest things made me feel lighter, as though the weight I carried was no longer mine alone. It wasn't only her kindness that drew me in, but the way she genuinely listened. She never interrupted, never rushed, never treated my words like background noise. She wanted to understand, and that was something I had longed for more than anything. One evening, I let my guard down and admitted how often I felt like I was invisible when it came to love. I told her how many times I had been told I was a good guy, only to watch someone choose someone else. I expected her to brush it off or tell me I was overthinking, but instead she nodded, as though she knew exactly how much those words could sting. She said softly that kindness wasn't weakness, that patience and honesty still mattered even in a world that didn't always reward them. Her reassurance stayed with me long after the conversation ended. Her own story surprised me too. Beneath her calm and steady presence, there were struggles she had carried quietly. She shared how difficult it was to live up to expectations, how sometimes she felt like she was giving so much of herself without being sure if it was ever enough. In her words, I recognized the same longing I felt, the need to be seen, to be valued, not for what we could give, but simply for who we were. That connection only deepened my feelings for her, because I realized we weren't just two people passing time. We were two hearts finding recognition in each other. I began to notice the small ways she cared. She would check in on me if I seemed tired, she would laugh at jokes that no one else noticed, and she remembered the little details I thought I had shared in passing. None of it was dramatic, but it all felt meaningful. Every gesture added to the growing belief that perhaps she saw me as more than a friend. I caught myself imagining what life could be like if this bond turned into something more. For the first time in years, I didn't just hope for love. I began to believe it might finally be within reach. Yet, beneath that hope, there was also hesitation. I could feel how much I wanted her in my life, but I didn't know if she felt the same. She gave me reasons to believe, but she never said it directly. That uncertainty made every moment sharper, every word heavier with possibility. I carried the thought quietly, balancing between the fear of being just another good guy she would let go and the dream of finally being the one someone chose. It happened one evening when the conversation between us had stretched longer than usual. We had talked about work, about memories that still made her smile, and about the weight of expectations that sometimes left both of us feeling drained. As the silence settled, I realized I couldn't keep my feelings hidden any longer. For weeks I had been holding them back, convincing myself that I should be patient, that maybe the right moment would come. But as I looked at her then, listening with the same warmth she always carried, I knew if I didn't speak now, I might never forgive myself. My voice shook slightly when I began, but I steadied myself. I told her she had become more than a friend to me, that her presence had changed the way I saw my days. I admitted that she had given me something I had been searching for, a reason to feel alive, to believe that I could be seen for who I was. I told her that I wanted more than conversations that ended when the day was done. I wanted her to know that I cared about her deeply, that the thought of her filled the emptiness I had carried for so long. For a few moments, she didn't respond. Her eyes held mine, but her silence pressed down on me like a weight. I feared I had said too much, that I had crossed into a space she wasn't ready for. Finally, she let out a quiet breath and spoke with a gentleness that cut deeper than any harsh word could. She said, "You're a good guy. You'll find someone." Her words landed softly, but inside they felt like a storm. On the surface, it was kindness, but beneath it, I could hear the truth. She wasn't choosing me. My heart tightened as I tried to understand, tried to accept what she was really saying. She wasn't rejecting me out of cruelty. She was protecting something in herself that I could not touch. I wanted to argue, to tell her that I didn't want someone. I wanted her, but I stopped myself. Love cannot be begged into existence, and I refused to turn her honesty into guilt. She explained slowly, almost as if she owed me more than those simple words. She said she valued me, that I had brought comfort into her life, that our connection was real, but not the kind of real that could grow into the future I imagined. She said she wasn't in the place to give her heart fully, that she didn't want to hurt me by offering only half of herself. Listening to her, I felt both pain and respect. She didn't push me away with excuses. She gave me the truth, even though it hurt to hear. I nodded, though my throat ached with words I didn't speak. I told her I understood, even if part of me wanted to fight it. She smiled sadly, as if she wished things could be different, and in that look I saw how much it cost her to say those words. Walking away later, I carried the weight of her kindness and her refusal all at once. It wasn't anger that filled me, but a deep ache that settled in the quiet corners of my heart. I had laid myself bare, and though she couldn't choose me, I couldn't regret that I had been honest about what she meant to me. I replayed her words over and over, each time hearing them in a slightly different way. At first, all I could feel was the sting of rejection, the heaviness of being told once again that I was a good guy but not the one chosen. It was a phrase that seemed to follow me like a shadow, reminding me of every time I had stood on the edge of something that felt like love, only to watch it slip away. But as the days passed, I began to listen to her voice in my memory with a different kind of clarity. She hadn't dismissed me. She had given me honesty wrapped in kindness, and that meant more than silence or false hope ever could. When I told her, everyone just wants to be loved, it wasn't meant as a protest or an attempt to change her mind. It was a truth I carried in my heart, one that belonged not only to me but to everyone who had ever longed to be seen for who they were. I realized that in that moment, I wasn't just speaking about myself. I was speaking about her too. She wanted love as much as I did. She just couldn't find it in me. That didn't make her cruel, and it didn't make me unworthy. It simply meant our paths had crossed in a way that wasn't meant to last forever. The more I thought about it, the more I began to see how valuable the experience had been, even if it didn't end the way I hoped. She had reminded me of what it felt like to open my heart again. She had shown me that I was still capable of connection, still capable of feeling deeply after so many disappointments. Losing her hurt, but in that hurt was proof that my heart hadn't gone numb. It was still beating, still searching, still ready to give itself when the right person came along. I promised myself I wouldn't let bitterness take root. I had seen people turn cold after rejection, building walls so high that no one could ever climb them. I didn't want that for myself. Her honesty gave me strength to believe that being genuine was never wasted, even if it didn't lead to the ending I had imagined. She had valued me for who I was, even if she couldn't choose me, and that was worth holding on to. With time, the ache softened into gratitude. Gratitude for the late conversations, for the laughter that broke through my loneliness, for the reminder that vulnerability isn't weakness. Gratitude that she had given me a truth I could grow from instead of a silence that would have left me guessing. I carried her words with me, not as a wound, but as a lesson. I understood now that everyone is searching, everyone is longing for the same thing, to be loved in a way that feels safe, true, and lasting. She couldn't give that to me, but she helped me see that I deserved it and that one day someone would. As I moved forward, I found myself holding on to hope more firmly than before. Not the desperate hope of someone afraid of being alone, but the quiet hope of someone who knows love is worth waiting for. The story between us had ended, but it left behind a chapter that shaped me, one that reminded me that my kindness wasn't a flaw and my honesty wasn't wasted. And in that understanding, I finally felt ready to keep going, carrying with me the belief that love, real love, will find its way when the time is right.